Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another segment with Brian and Janice on this beautiful, beautiful Sunday evening. We had an awesome weekend this weekend. The weather was absolutely perfect, and we were busy. You were more busy than I was. So we just want to welcome everybody. We've been out for a few weeks because we've been working on some ventures and have accomplished some, and still working on, hey Rob, still working on some others. But we want to start tonight off by saying congratulations again, who's already been in session, Robert Stewart, my dear, one of my former just little boys in the neighborhood, growing up in Selma, Alabama. I've always admired him and thought the world of Robert. We are so proud of you, Robert. Congratulations.
Congratulations, brother.
Senator.
Proud of you, Senator
Robert Stewart.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
We had a great night last night enjoying his reception. It was beautiful.
Wonderful.
So many faces and friends I haven't seen in years. But everything was just awesome. And we look forward to so many great events and ventures out there. It was awesome. This weekend was a very busy weekend for Selma, Jubilee weekend. Brian had the awesome opportunity of working with his frat brothers this weekend, doing community service, working with the youth. So getting things lined up for the parade. They had a wonderful time. And it's always good to see people at home doing things to help make home better, and to love from home, loving at home. They say love starts at home and then it spreads abroad. So what we were doing this weekend is just loving and starting love at home. Everybody just looks so beautiful and doing well, and that's always a blessing to see that. We have so many things going on in the world today, and we have to be mindful of there may be somebody that's close to you that may be going through something that you may not recognize, but you always have to find a moment of your time in your heart to just say, you know what? I'm praying for you. I love you, and it's going to be okay. We're going to make it through this. Wouldn't you agree, Brian?
I agree.
We can never we can never get so caught up in us and ourselves that we forget our brother and sister that's right next to us. So I just want to remind you guys, check on the young people. They need you right now more than ever. We just got some traumatic news that's kind of set us back tonight.
Set us back, right?
Well, it set somebody back, Brian.
Yeah, but it did set us back.
Okay. Anyway. But anyway, we just want to remind you guys to watch out for home. Check on home first. Check on the young people. It doesn't matter what their age is. Young teens, young adults. Check on them. Make sure they're okay and they're in a good place. And if there's anything that's in your power to do to assist or to aid them or to get help for them, check on those people. I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
So what we want to do tonight, Brian is going to help everybody he's going to dissect the topic of what events led up to Bloody Sunday. Did you want to say something, Brian?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But what Janice is referring to is a rash of suicides here lately as it relates to our young people. So next week, what we will do is we will do a show, a full show on suicide prevention, suicide awareness as it relates to our young people. Whenever a young person feels like there is no place to go and that they cannot talk to someone, that is a problem. So we need to organize. If we're not in the schools, there needs to be a safe haven created within the schools so that children can actually reach out if they're having a problem and that they feel safe with reaching out. So there needs to be a safe space created. So the news that Janice was referring to was my son knew two young students that committed suicide over the weekend. And he is freshman year at the University of Alabama. He was the drum major for Stanhope Elmore High School, and unfortunately, that took place with two of the students that he knew. So let's, we want to try to make certain that there is a safe space for children.
Yes.
Also, in that there's someone that a child can call, even if it is outside of being a parent. There needs to be a mentor or a big brother, big sister that child feels comfortable with reaching out to. So we'll deal with that topic on next week. We'll talk about creating, safe spaces for our young people that are in school so that they can reach out and feel like, their voice is being heard. Yeah. And I think that's the main thing, is that a lot of times when children get in spaces, and the peer pressure that they deal with on a daily basis now, much greater than what we dealt with as young people.
Definitely.
So, they're going, through a whole lot. And then having to maintain grades, things of that nature. So we will make certain that we deal with that. Yes. But let's talk about, like you said, this past weekend was Jubilee weekend in Selma, Alabama. So we want to talk about some of the things that, and I'll just give us a quick, brief summary, if I can be brief. This may
Impossible.
Not be brief. This may not be brief. This is a passion of mine, so I love this history. But let's talk about some of the events that led up to the actual event that we know as Bloody Sunday. There's a commemoration every year that's done in Selma, pretty much the first weekend of March. March 7, 1965 was the, that infamous day that will live in history forever. Yes. That we call Bloody Sunday. But let's really talk about some of the things that led up to that. And I think we need to clarify that the initial march that was being done at that particular time on March the 7th, at that moment did not really have a lot to do with the Voting Rights Act, okay? And so many of us, or passing yes. the Voting Rights Act, or trying to implement plans to give to President Lyndon Johnson as it relates to the Voting Rights Act. So let's kind of clarify that, and that's what I kind of want to touch on. So the initial march that we know as Bloody Sunday, some of the events that led up to that specifically was the murder of Jimmie Lee Jackson yes. out of Marion, Alabama. So what happens in reference to these events taking place? On February the 18th, 1965, Jimmie Lee Jackson, who was a young deacon of St. James Baptist Church, leads protesters in a march to free SCLC worker that had been dispatched to Marion to help as it relates to the violence that they had came under with Sheriff Jimmy Clark. Okay, in the midst of that, James Orange, which was that worker that was dispatched by SCLC, mm-hmm. was arrested. Jimmie Lee Jackson, on the night of February the 18th, 1965, rallies protesters. They leave from the Zion United Methodist Church.
Was that in Marion?
That was in Marion okay. as well, where C.T. Vivian okay. had also just spoken, and they leave to march to the jail in protest of James Orange, SCLC worker that had been dispatched, the foot soldier that had been dispatched there. They leave in protest to free him from the arrest, okay, that he had just, like I said, just been arrested. So in the process of that, state troopers mm-hmm. in the cover of night coordinates with the local police department of Marion, Alabama at that time, and they began to exact horror on these protesters in Marion, Alabama, that was led by Jimmie Lee Jackson. In the crowd of the protest was Jimmie Lee Jackson's mother, as well as his 82-year-old grandfather. Okay? The state troopers, the local police, they began to do what they do. They took out billy clubs, if you can imagine, at night. And from what is been told now, what's been recorded in the history books, and not only the history books, when you look in the archives, is that the street lights that particular night.
Did they have any street lights?
They did have street lights, but they were purposely shut down.
Okay.
Okay. So when the state troopers go in, when the local police go in, during the night, they began to beat these people senseless. Billy club them. Of course, the crowd disperses. Some run back to the church. Jimmie Lee, his mother and grandfather run into a convenience store called Max at the time. The police enters there, try to attack Jimmie Lee's mother, who was trying to protect her father, Jimmie Lee's grandfather.
Okay.
And in the process, Jimmie Lee standing up for his mother, the police shoots Jimmie Lee 5 times in the midsection. Okay. All of this transpired, like I say, February the 18th, 1965. Jimmie Lee is then not taken to the hospital, but is taken to jail. Okay.
After he was shot?
After he was shot.
Wow.
He's taken to the hospital after outrage and protest starts back up, and he's taken to Good Samaritan.
In Selma.
Yes, Selma.
Yes, a black-owned hospital.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
At that time. Unfortunately, Jimmie Lee passes, but prior to him passing, Dr. King visits him in the hospital. Okay.
Okay.
Prior to him passing, 3 days after the shooting and Jimmie Lee is taken to Good Samaritan, Dr. King makes a visit to Jimmie Lee. Jimmie Lee began to tell him or recount some of the events from that night as Dr. King spoke with him. And he begins to tell him Jimmie Lee began to tell Dr. King not to weary in the fight for voting rights. Okay. Now keep in mind also, let me go back, let me backtrack. Prior to this whole situation, now we know that part of the protest was because of James Orange, which was SCLC foot soldier that had come down to investigate, and not only investigate some of the things that were happening by the way of Sheriff Jimmy Clark, but also he had came down to push voting rights, okay, and to make sure that the people of Marion were organizing to vote. Jimmie Lee, prior to this, had already tried to vote twice and had been turned away twice, was not allowed to vote in Marion. Okay, so Jimmie Lee was a very, very active, okay, protester.
Okay.
In every way possible. He wasn't one that just sat on the sideline and did nothing. This young deacon was one that was a leader of people, and not only a leader of people, he was an example on what it was to keep going when you're denied, okay? To get back out there and to do it again. And he knew that his life was on. This was not something, because in Marion, little bitty Marion, Alabama, okay? Little bitty Marion, Alabama had more hangings than any other county in the Black Belt of Alabama. So this wasn't something that was, that was strange to them as far as the way they were being treated. Okay, it was about the persistence. It was about the desire to change a system. Okay, it was about the desire to be counted worthy as a human being on exercising a right that every citizen should have. Okay, so let's go back. Dr. King speaks with Jimmie Lee in the Good Samaritan, February the 26th, 1965. 8 days later, Jimmie Lee passes on. Okay. On March the 3rd, Dr. King does the funeral. He pretty much pronounces that Jimmie Lee was a martyr and he was a hero for the cause of liberation and justice. Okay. March the 7th, 1960. Let me, can I back up one more time?
Look at the camera.
Okay, look at
me.
Okay, look at the camera. But let me back up one more time for you all. February the 21st, prior to, 2 days after, or 3 days after February the 18th, February the 18th, Jimmie Lee protesters, he up under the cover of night, he's shot. February the 21st, 1965, Malcolm X is assassinated. So we have a lot of dynamics playing into the events that are unfolding. We have Jimmie Lee shot in Marion, Alabama. Then we have Malcolm assassinated 3 days later. Okay. Now, Jimmie Lee passes on the 26th. Dr. King on March the 3rd does the funeral. And then on March the 7th, we have the first march that we know now as Bloody Sunday. The first march was in protest to Jimmie Lee being shot and killed in Marion, Alabama. Okay? They used the first march that we know as Bloody Sunday. They did not get past the foot of the bridge before they were turned around with billy clubs and dogs. Okay, we know the famous picture of John Lewis being attacked, who was leading the march at the time from the SNCC organization, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee organization, and also SCLC was collaborating and working together, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, okay, that Dr. King started. So we have these brothers and sisters that are attempting to cross the bridge and marching in protest to Jimmie Lee Jackson being shot and killed for protesting in Marion as it relates to not only voting rights, but just justice for his people. Okay, so you have Jimmie Lee, you have Malcolm X, then Jimmie Lee passes, and now you have the Bloody Sunday, the march on across the Edmund Pettus Bridge on March the 7th, 1965. Now, here's the interesting thing as well, family. In 1965, you also had what we call the LCFO, the Lowndes County Freedom Organization.
Yes.
Which was also, at this particular time, pressing its officials, its county officials, as it relates to voting rights. You have Stokely Carmichael, who at the time was the leader of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, come to Lowndes County. Lowndes County uses a Black Panther, the LCFO, Lowndes County Freedom Organization, uses a Black Panther for its letterhead. Now, here's the catch. Because the white voters in Lowndes County 75% of them were illiterate. They could not read. So for the white vote, they had a rooster on the ballot, which stood for white rights. White supremacy, basically, and white rights. On the ballot, they had a Black Panther, which also the Black Panther represented, as it relates to what John Hewitt, who was the president of the LCFO at the time, stated that the Black Panther represented its constituency, because when the Black Panther would be pushed back into a corner and had no other place to retreat, he would come out fighting. Yeah. So he described Black people in Lowndes County fighting for their rights to vote. All of this is happening in 1965. Okay? So it creates an atmosphere, it creates an environment that Dr. King uses as a catalyst to go to Lyndon B. Johnson and says, we're not going to wait anymore. You got to do something, and you got to do it now. If not, I'm not going to be able to control these Black people. And the campaign for nonviolence is going. So we have to tell the story like it really. The campaign for nonviolence is going to go out the window. You've assassinated Malcolm X. Jimmie Lee Jackson has been killed. The brutality has been exacted by the state troopers of Alabama, who majority of them were Ku Klux Klansmen at the time. Something has to be done. So when he go to Johnson, he's prepared to make the argument that I cannot control these people if you don't get this done. Lowndes County Freedom Organization, you had also at that time the Deacons of Defense. Out of Mississippi, you had the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. Okay, so many things were actually happening at that particular time that set the environment for the passing of the Voting Rights Bill. Okay, yes. Fannie Lou Hamer, who stated, I'm tired of being sick and tired, and when you get sick and tired, you do something about it. Yes. Okay. Malcolm also, prior to his assassination, does his famous quote, if you stick a knife 9 inches into my brother's back and you pull it out 6 inches, you still have the 3 inches that are still in, no progress. The progress there is no progress because the knife's still in his back. You understand what I'm saying? So we have all of these things going on, our family, all of these things transpiring at this time that leads up to what we know as Bloody Sunday. And like I said, the initial march across the bridge was in reference to the murder
of Jimmie Lee Jackson.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It was the catalyst to what we know now as the passing of the Voting Rights Act. Okay. So,
Brian, I do want to add this. One thing, some people know, a lot of people don't know. During that Bloody Sunday, my parents, my father and grandfather, owned the funeral home, W.J. Anderson Funeral Home. Mm-hmm. And within the funeral home, my father was the ambulance service. Mm-hmm. So on those people that were beaten and killed and shot or whatever, it was my father's responsibility to go across the bridge, because once they crossed over is when the actual brutality began. Mm-hmm. So my father was assigned he took it upon himself to go across the Edmund Pettus Bridge to pick up as many wounded as he possibly could, to get them to the Good Samaritan Hospital, which was the black hospital for Selma, Alabama. And in saying that, he was forbidden to go across. Mm. They dared him to go across. And if you go and you watch the movie or listen to the excerpt of the Bloody Sunday March across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, you will hear my Father's voice. You will hear him talking about, he's going. I'm going. And he did that. And that's one of my memories that I have to live with and watch the footage of that, because my father was put in harm's way, which he didn't mind, to go across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And I see Sharon White is watching, and she can attest to this, being a historian, that great historian that she is, that my father, Morris J. Ace Anderson, was the one to go across the bridge to pick up those wounded people and bring them back to the hospital to get care.
And I think it's a great history that has to be told. And we have to tell it, like I said, from an aspect where we're not, this doesn't become a thing of, fantasy, so to speak.
Yes.
History, the true account of history, has to be told from a perspective, and it has to be put into, I guess, it has to be put in a way to where it comes to life. Just saying that, just recounting that we're doing this to commemorate Bloody Sunday, but we really don't know the events that led up to Bloody Sunday, or why there even was a Bloody Sunday. Okay, the catalyst of Jimmie Lee, so the blood started flowing way before Bloody Sunday.
Yes, it did.
Okay, so the whole terminology of Bloody Sunday is just a, it's a conclusion
of what was really going on.
Happening at that time.
Definitely, Brian.
Okay,
definitely.
So we need to know the prelude of events that lead up to what we know as Bloody Sunday, and that's why I think it's so significant. And when we commemorate that, we do not need to allow social organizations that have an agenda,
exactly,
okay, to change what the true march was about. Okay. Now, what do you mean, Brian, when you say organizations that may have a social agenda? What I mean when I say that is that some organizations, some entities want us to believe that Bloody Sunday was simply about one thing, and the only thing that it was about was voting. Okay? No, voting was secondary at this particular time, whereas concerning the march on that particular Sunday, that we now know as Bloody Sunday, okay, they were marching also. The primary reason was to stop the violence. It was to counteract the violence that was going on in Perry County, Dallas County, and Lowndes County. Yeah. So that Black Belt region was coming up under heavy attack by the Ku Klux Klansmen, by state troopers, by local law enforcement officials. Yes. Okay, it was more than coming on. Like I said, Bloody Sunday, the blood had already started flowing. Yeah. When you had other civil rights activists to come and join, when you had the C.T. Vivian being dispatched, like I said, he had spoke that same particular night
that Jimmie Lee was shot.
That Jimmie Lee led protesters. Right. Okay. So all of these things, the culmination of Bloody Sunday is what we see as it relates to the events that were happening prior to then. And like I said, believe it or not, the Malcolm X assassination on February the 21st, 1965 had a cataclysmic effect as it relates to what John Lewis decided we need to march against Dr. King's wishes, because Dr. King did not sanction the march on March the 7th, 1965, the first march. He did not sanction, he did not agree. John Lewis steps out as at that time as part of the SNCC, SNCC.
Yes.
Okay. And he takes the lead. The influence based on what had happened February the 21st, 1965, with the assassination of Malcolm X after Jimmie Lee was shot on February the 18th of 1965.
Got it.
So we see a domino effect, family, taking
People
place
were tired.
here.
They were tired.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And, so we don't need to lose sight of that. We do not need to allow, like I said, social entities, whether it be the government, it doesn't matter, social organizations, to paint this bridge as simply, the Edmonds, crossing the Edmund-Pettus Bridge is commemorating, yes, Bloody Sunday and those foot soldiers that were out there marching ready to put their life on the line. We need to commemorate that, but we do not need to allow them to make it only about one particular aspect of what the movement was.
Yes.
And the movement was more than just about voting rights. Okay.
Yes.
So we need to understand that. I think when we do that, when we do that, then we get the true picture.
I think people will get it then. They'll get it. Because right now people we feel like we're under attack. Yeah. We feel like we don't have, any rights. We feel like we're being underserved. And with that being said, when our people were attacked back then, when they were beaten, when they were denied voting rights and what have you, those people were angry. They said, we got to do something. That's what they said. We got to do something. And they acted on that. But they went peacefully. But they weren't met with peace.
Yeah. And that's a good point that Sharon brings out.
Okay.
The original plan was to place Jimmie Lee's body on the steps of the Capitol. And that would have been ideal, because we see also, when the body of Emmett Till and Mother Till having an open casket. So there were so many things transpiring at this particular juncture in history, in the movement, what we know as the movement. I like to refer to it as the movement and not just the civil rights movement, because every time we say civil rights, it gets skewed to that the protest simply being about one particular facet.
I think that's what that's what they want it to be about. Make it light.
That's where the whole programming, social engineering comes into play, to where they want our kids only to focus on the nonviolent actions as it relates to the voting rights. But it was much more than that. Okay, like I said, in Lowndes County at the time was 80% African American. And there was not one registered voter in Lowndes County that was black in 1965.
Wow.
So when Stokely Carmichael comes to Lowndes County, meets with John Hewitt, they established the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. Was actually established before Stokely came down. The SNCC started to work with them. Their agenda was not a nonviolent agenda. Their agenda was by any means necessary. If we need to step out and defend ourselves so that we can vote, then we're well prepared to do that.
And they were.
Okay? So we have to, like I said, we have to tell history the correct way. And we should not fantasize it. We should not make it something.
Yes, that is not.
And not only that is not, but that is the romanticization of it. We should not make it something that is just appealing and whitewash it, if we will. Okay? Because the bridge crossing events have been whitewashed and hijacked by politicians now. Okay? To use black people for their vote. Okay? Now, let me say this. Stokely and John Hewitt, something they did unique in Lowndes County needs to be done again today. They create their own party. Okay? The Lowndes County Freedom Organization ended up being the Black Party. what we would come to know as the Black Panther Party.
Oh, wow.
They created and they chose people that they wanted to run that were black. Made sure they got on the back, had a committee meeting, elected those people that they wanted to run for office, made sure they got on the ballot, even though none got elected the first time.
But they made sure.
And see, that's where we as black people, we need to recognize the agenda of politicians. It has not changed. Okay? And the agenda is the same. They use you for your vote. They come around. They do these, give you these platitudes, handouts. You understand what I'm saying? Just to get your vote. Then once they got your vote and they're in office, they do not keep any promise made. So now we have to, as black people, we have to be smarter than that.
Yes.
Okay. We need to look at history and really understand history. And that's what we're not doing. Okay. Don't forget the lies whites spread about the march. Yeah. Said the march was just for black men to have sex with white women. They said, every night. Yeah. And that is true, Sharon.
Yes.
Okay. So there again, whitewashing as it relates to the march. Okay.
Yes.
And some of the fictitious stories that are told to try to romanticize the march and try to make black people, there again, the whole concept of inferiority plays into this.
And Lowndes County doesn't get the credit, like Sharon says.
Yeah, Lowndes County never gets credit for that. And they play. And I'm gonna do a whole show on the Lowndes County Freedom Organization.
Wow, Brian, that's awesome.
That show will change minds and bring new insight as it relates to what Dr. King and SCLC fed off of. See, one thing you got, and I'll just say this briefly. Dr. King did not want Stokely Carmichael at the time and John Hewitt to incite the people to defend themselves, to go against the nonviolent, mantra that SCLC had established. Okay, so Dr. King felt it necessary. Now I got to go. He was almost forced to come and do the March to Montgomery. He really didn't have a choice. Stokely, Hewitt, they were collaborating. Lowndes County said, we're tired.
Yes.
Okay. Perry County was also, there was a faction there that was saying that if you all don't do something, SCLC, C.T. Vivian had gone up there, had spoken. C.T. Vivian ended up having to go back. So these are things that we need to recount and tell properly.
Tell the truth.
Okay. So, it's interesting how our story gets twisted for political gain. Okay. We know that the president was in town today commemorating the bridge crossing. John Lewis, which is one of our great heroes.
He's an ancestor now.
He's put on a pedestal because of his involvement with that. But see, what people don't realize is that John Lewis was ready to fight too, even though he got his head knocked in. Okay, because John Lewis, even though he disagreed with Stokely,
yes, he did.
Okay, he was still prepared to go through whatever he needed to go through and lead these people. So, brothers and sisters, and I just wanted to share that little bit of history with the commemoration today. Let's not get lost in the, some of the, like I said, fictitious things that surrounds now the bridge crossing that really makes our commemoration insignificant. Okay? Because now it's about photo ops. President coming down, senators coming down and dancing and doing the jigaboo. You know, city officials, getting their photos taken. Why in the world? And this is something that you all can help me with, family. Help me to understand this, Selma, because I care about my people. Instead of Biden coming down here to do a photo op about the commemoration of Bloody Sunday.
Come on, Brian.
Why not come down here with $1 billion check and say, we're going to rebuild historic Selma.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to rebuild historic Selma. Okay, if you can send $70 billion
to
Ukraine, okay, which is a senseless war, which is a fabricated war, which is a war that is promoted by the U.S. interests, no more, no less. All the lies that have been told about Putin, all the propaganda that we've brought into and been fed through the U.S. media.
Yes.
Okay, and not given always like they do. They give partial truths, not the whole truth. Okay, so that people can get in an uproar and have basically one side of the story that they lean toward.
Yes.
Okay, why is it that Biden cannot come and say, I appreciate the fight that happened as it relates to the bridge crossing and John Lewis and all of those foot soldiers that put their lives on the line.
They did.
And this is how we appreciate them. Selma has been hit by F2 tornado.
Right.
And we want to, as the United States government doing the right thing, finally, we want to contribute $1 billion in the cleanup effort and the rebuilding effort of historic Selma. Now, that deserves a photo op. But you coming down here to commemorate something that where half truths are told, that doesn't deserve a photo op, in my opinion. Okay? And for the officials that wants everyone, yes, it brings, now, let me say this. These are my opinions and my opinions only.
And it's okay.
Okay? But the officials that buy into that and sell the people on the president coming when the president have not shown, in my opinion, one iota of caring. Yes, he passed legislation, but that's legislation that's no different from any other town, okay, that has. But when your interest is somewhere else, outside of the United States, you can get monies pushed there immediately.
Yes, you can.
But your country and your people that you're supposedly leading and care so much about, you can't sign special legislation to help them. Something's wrong. And something is wrong when we as black people do not recognize that our interest is not supported when it comes to politicians wanting to use us simply to garner our vote, and yet gives empty promises, fulfills nothing, fights for nothing, do nothing, and 2 and 4 years later, they're back around wanting again our vote.
Come on now.
Okay? Something is wrong. If we have to, and one solution that I still say would work today, there is $13 trillion economically in the black community. Okay? If I had to break that, there's 22 million people in this country that classify themselves as African American people. 22 million. If we are serious about change, $13 trillion economically, 22 million people, if we take 30% of that, create our own political party, run our own political agenda, select our own people that will fight for the interests of black people.
Yes.
And put that $13 trillion behind them, we could change the dynamic of this country overnight. So see, the government is not afraid of black people.
No.
Okay? We have to understand that the president and all the senators and the congressmen in Washington, they really not serious about doing anything for African Americans. Okay? Their agenda now is more so to espouse the diversity crowd. So now anybody that comes in and label themselves in the inclusive diversity crowd is now precedes African Americans' interests.
Yes.
Okay. So now that crowd is growing, and now when you couple other ethnic persuasions into that crowd that may be brown, that crowd actually exceeds African Americans. So the interest of us being fulfilled or supported is very minuscule. So we have to tell the truth about the situation. So when our government goes up to write legislation, HB 40, House Bill 40, presented by Sheila Jackson Lee again this year for reparation. Do you really think they're talking about forming a committee to pay Why should you form a committee to pay reparations when you promised black people reparations in 1865 and then retracted the reparations that you promised? Why do you need to form a committee for that? You don't need to form a committee for that. The forming of committee is simply to continue to delay.
And we sit and allow it. We sit back, nobody says anything.
It is because we don't understand until we go back to the principle of black power, African American power. See, we are losing, and we're going to continue to lose.
And we're getting pushed further and further down.
Listen, Frederick Douglass said that power concedes nothing without demand. Black people aren't demanding anything. We really, when we look at it, we really aren't demanding a thing. Okay? But what we want to do is fit in with everybody else so that we can feel important. Okay? But we're not demanding anything. See, local officials have got to we can't do politics as usual. Politics as usual does not work, okay, civically for black people. Let me tell you something. What is the difference between a racist and a white supremacist? Do you know?
Are you asking me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really don't.
Just give me your thoughts.
Yeah,
just free think. Tell me what you think. What is the difference between a racist and a white supremacist?
I don't think there is any.
Okay. Let me tell you what the difference is between a racist and a white supremacist. A white supremacist is one that focuses on keeping white men in power, controlling the system. Yes. The system, baby. Okay. The white men want to control the government.
Yes.
Okay. They want to control it on the federal,
state and
local levels.
That's exactly right.
So white supremacy is Europeans that makes it a point to keep white men in power that can control the system that was designed and created for them to function in.
Yes.
That is what white supremacist is. That's what a white supremacist is, and that's what white supremacy is. Now, for a black person to come into a white system and think that they can change something as it relates to their people, we're not being honest with ourselves. And we're not students of history. Okay? Because there is no way that we are limited in a system that was designed to support white people and did not include black people. We got to get off of this kick about the 14th Amendment No, the 14th Amendment did not include us in anything. It was a pseudo amendment that was masked to make black people think they were included.
Wow.
But nothing changed as it relates to the Constitution. So now I'm getting
That's
hyper
okay.
here. But
Get hyper.
okay.
We need that.
So what we have to do as black people in politics, if we're going to play the game, okay, we have to use the monies, grant funding, to create within our communities. Okay, so whatever that money is, when it's allocated and it's dispersed, and if you notice something, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but black communities are always allocated the least amount of money.
Yes.
As it relates to, and guess what they say? It's because of everything is, the numbers are due to populations. Okay. Now, if Pike Road can create a town, and everybody in that little town put their resources together and say, this is what we want. And when they go to the government, they get exactly what they want. Okay. Why isn't the same consideration given for black towns that's been in existence for 50, 100, 120 years? The same consideration is not given. Why? It shows you that the system is rigged against us. All right, so we have to learn how to control what we can within
Brian,
the system.
Those towns, we need leaders, the proper leadership in those towns that will speak and handle things properly.
I agree. We can handle things covertly.
Okay.
And this is what I'm saying with black people, black politicians. I even question whether or not black politicians really had civics in school.
Wow.
Because most of them don't understand how to play the political game. When they get in office, they fall into the trap of playing the game of the chess master. Okay? They don't understand that the funding that they get, they can use to create jobs in their own community.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Did, yes.
And they can circulate that dollar within their own community. Okay? They do not have to hire anybody outside of their own communities. If you got contractors and they do not have get them licensed. Get them bonded. Bring in African Americans to teach those that are carpenters, brickmakers, whatever the case may be. Okay? Bring in educators that will focus on a black agenda and that's not scared to teach black history. You got black people that are scared to teach black history. You have HBCUs right now that do not have a black studies program at all. You have black elementary schools and black private schools that do not have a curriculum that teach anything about black interests and black history. Okay? So what are we doing? We're regurgitating a white system with our children, with those elected officials that are politicians. We're regurgitating a white system with them, okay, that doesn't fulfill the interests of black people at all. So my question is, when do we break out of that? When do we stop being the puppet on the string to the master? Okay? When do we get bold enough to say or to stand on the floor and say, no, this is not going to happen this way. If I have to stand on the Capitol with a bullhorn by myself, if I have to go to every project in Montgomery, Selma, Huntsville, Mobile, there are a lot of them. Okay? And if we have to do a 1,000,000-man march on the Capitol of Montgomery, Alabama, it's not going down like this anymore. You're not going to continue to undervalue my people by undercutting them. That's what, and it just takes somebody that can articulate and go back and look at the history of the Alabama politics, okay, and see how Alabama politics is structured, and understand how the gerrymandering and all of those things work. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And the continued gentrification to divide neighborhoods and to cut blacks out of certain voting lines, things of that nature. We've got to do our research if we're going to be effective. Okay, if we're going to stay in the system, then we got to be smarter than they are in the system. You understand? So that's my rant for that. Well, no. We don't rant.
We don't.
No, that's my pontification for tonight.
We do facts.
We do facts.
We do facts, and we can back it up.
Absolutely.
All these books.
We can back it up. Okay?
But you can't see it.
Can't see it? All right.
Yeah.
Whole chapter on Selma, Jimmie Lee Jackson, and the March on the Bridge. Okay? Black Against Empire. Whole chapter on the Lowndes County efforts that changed the structure of blacks being put on ballots, things of that nature. We need to do the research. We need to read. Okay? Baba Dick Gregory said this about reading. He said, you can burn the book, but the book cannot burn you. I echo what Brother Baba Gregory said.
That's
you
your
can burn the book, but the book cannot burn you. Pick the book up and read it. Let's find out what's going on. We really need to find out. I just don't understand it, Janice. Sometimes I'm befuddled because when I look at how we perceive things as it relates to our interests, I'm confused because I see on one end, yes, we've made progress.
Yes.
But on the other end,
You digress.
we've looked like we've regressed.
Yes.
And because we're still dealing with and fighting for the same thing that we were fighting for in 1865.
Wow.
Okay, so and let me say this, because we can sit at a lunch counter and because we can eat where white folks eat, our food was much better anyway.
Well, we were cooking their food.
That's right.
Come on.
We were cooking their food. Absolutely. Now, it may not have been the healthiest way to cook.
That's what it was good.
It was sure enough good.
And they ate it.
Okay. But when we seriously look at how far have we come, we have to really start asking ourselves the question, and we have to do an honest assessment and analysis. Have we really come that far? Listen, Brown versus the Board of Education. Okay, 1955. Now, when we look at Brown versus the Board of Education to desegregate the school system, when you look at the school systems in Montgomery today, when you look at, you could come on up to Prattville, you could come on up to Millbrook, you could come to Wetumpka, you can go to Selma. What has happened? The majority of the public school systems have been resegregated. Do you know why? Because you had governors like the governor of Arkansas that says no black person is going to integrate into our public school systems. They're not going to enter into our elementary, our intermediate, our high, nor our colleges. You had a Governor Wallace that would stand in the door of the University of Alabama and say segregation now, segregation forever. No black is coming to the University of Alabama. And this was not just, this was all over the United States. Matter of fact, the only reason that the public school system was integrated was because the federal government, not only by force, but by legislation, had to threaten the Southern politicians as it relates to the school system concerning funding. Okay? So guess what? They threatened them with money. We have to hit that pocket again as well. So the federal government tells the Southern politicians, if you do not allow this, then we will cut off all funding. Wow. Now, guess what the Southern politician did? Said, okay, we will write into our state laws and legislations, and we will start private schools and use the money that the federal government is sending to the public schools.
Fact.
So now we have a whole different dynamic. But when you look at it, have we really progressed?
No.
Black people. Okay, my people, we are going backwards. Every school, public school now, we have to fight for funding. If you go to your school board meetings, go to your city council meetings, there's no reason that we should be fighting for funding to get books for our children,
to get technology,
to have lunch programs now, all of these things, technology, like you said. Why in the world are we still underfunded? That's what the desegregation of schools was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be about equality as it relates to books, equipment, programs, all of those things. But yet we're still fighting for that today. Something's wrong. Okay? So, what I said, we're still up under a white supremacist faction as it relates to the government, whether we want to admit that or not. Okay?
But then you have other nationalities coming here from other countries that are getting better fundings, right?
If you are a citizen of Ukraine, you can come here now and apply for Social Security and welfare. Black people have been here over 400 years, and we have to fight for disability, Social Security, and welfare. Can somebody please explain that to me? And we allow it to happen because we don't raise the issues. We don't talk about what's real in our communities. And what's real is, if monies can be given away to everybody else, then something can be done for us, period. And we need to sound the alarm. Okay? I'm tired of being sick and tired. Yeah. So, and I know my people are tired of being sick and tired. There's no way you tell me that you can get on Air Force One, fly down here to commemorate a bridge crossing, and yet look over the city when you're flying into the city and not want to do something about, truly do something about a historic city. If it means that much, if Selma means that much, okay, show us. If Dallas County means that much, show us. Open the pocketbook. You open it for white cities and states
And counties and little towns.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Open the pocketbook and show us how much you care. Those are the things that we have to start demanding. Those are the things that we have to become re-engaged in the fight. We're not in the fight anymore.
No, we're not.
Okay, we just happen to be here.
Well, you think we're afraid? People are afraid? Or what is it?
Comfortability comes in all different forms and fashions. Right? And when we get comfortable in a thing and we feel like we've arrived and we don't need to fight anymore because we're in the upper echelon now. We are just black people. Our PTSD is real. Okay? And for some reason, we feel like we've arrived. No, bro, I'm here to tell you all we have not arrived. Okay? We got to get back in the fight. And we need serious thought and serious talk. We don't need people that's just blowing smoke up our butt. We got enough smoke in our butt. Okay? We need somebody that's going to tell us the truth about what is going on.
Yes.
And representatives, we need to hold them accountable. Okay? If you're up there rubbing shoulders with the white folks and you ain't saying nothing about what's really going on, we need to get you out of there. That's how simple. And we need to put somebody in there that's got a clear-cut agenda to advance their people. Every person that represents when you're talking about the Caucasian, when a Caucasian senator goes to the Senate or representative goes to the Congress, they tell you we're here to represent the people's interests that put us in office. If that excludes the African American, so be it. Okay?
Exactly.
Why cannot we be honest like that? You understand what I'm saying? We don't have to see people don't have to like. Our problem is we want to get along with everybody, and that's fine. I understand that we can love everybody, but love still starts at home. You said it when we started the show. Then spreads abroad. Yes. Why is it that everybody else can love themselves first, but when it comes to us, it's racist? You understand what I'm saying? The Hispanic loves themselves first. They do. The Asian loves themselves first. Understand what I'm saying? The Indian loves themselves first. And they put their people's interests above anybody else first. Okay? That's how simple that is. But when it comes to black people loving themselves first and putting their interests first,
it's a problem.
No, it's racist.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? Well, if you can't love yourself first, there's no way you can love all other people. You understand? You got to demonstrate love first to your own before you can say you love everybody else. So we are confused, unfortunately. Yeah, but we're going to keep sounding the alarm. Like I said, the true history of the bridge crossing, what we wanted to highlight and bring out tonight and talk to you all about. But we've got to keep pressing the fight.
And share this video.
Okay.
Share this.
Yeah.
I mean.
So, okay.
Okay.
We're gonna
I was just saying, tell them, share this video.
Yes. Please share. It'll be uploaded to our YouTube site here within the next 30 minutes. Please share this video, like this video, thumbs up, all of the good things that you do on social media.
I think if it can get to enough people, maybe it just might fall upon the right ears.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, whether it falls upon the right ears or not, we're gonna keep sounding the alarm. Somebody's gonna hear us, okay? And we've got a long way to go. We really, really do. Our children are hurting.
Yes.
Our people are hurting. And we need to really be mindful of the fact that, I'm just of the mindset that if one is not doing well, nobody's doing well. Okay? And we have to get back to that principle of thinking. See, that's a spiritual mind.
Yes, it is.
That thinks like that. Yeah. If one of my people is hurting, then we're all hurting. For some reason, we've lost that. We've lost that type of love. And you know, so that's a whole nother show, but I'll stop there.
Okay.
All right, sweetie.
Well, thank you everybody for watching tonight. I hope you have enjoyed the show and share it with as many people as you possibly can. We're all in this together. At no time that one needs to feel that they're any better or more comfortable than the next one, because at any moment, any time, any day, blinking of an eye, it can be you. Okay?
Absolutely.
So until we do something to get it out to the masses and to those that are in these leadership positions and those that are going into these new positions, hey, it's all smoke and mirrors. So we're coming up 2024 election. That all get started.
It started already.
Yeah.
And we'll be discussing that in detail. We'll discuss candidates as they continue to make their formal announcements, things of that nature. We'll give you a rundown of what their platform is. So we'll talk about all of those things coming up in the future. Exactly. Donald Trump is back on the, back on the trail. So we need to know about his agenda as well. And I'll talk in depth about the history of Donald Trump prior to politics. We'll go into a little bit of that. So that you all have a clear understanding of who you are supporting and voting for.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We love you guys.
Love you all. Love you all. Love you all. Peace.
See you next Sunday.
Bye-bye.